first of all, thanks guys for taking your time for Butik. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Since you're playing in an hour or so, I'd like to focus on the back-to-back. And the first thing I'd like to ask you is, do you maybe remember the first time you played together? Like, was it a planned thing or did it just come about?
The first time we played back-to-back was actually just a friend party, a couple of friends. We did a small party in a train station 2 hours outside of Berlin.
I mean, depends how you define small, I guess.
I guess it was set like,
it was like 60 or 70 people. Or something.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it was actually quite like right after the pandemic, so we hadn't played out in such a long time, and it was just for friends. And then we just kind of had a spontaneous back-to-back at the end, and it was
And how did
really
it
fun.
develop from there? Was there like a moment where you guys clicked and decided to do this more often, or because like the next question is related mostly to this debate, which is, I guess it's popular right now, regarding, festival curators kind of putting together this
Back-to-backs.
yeah, but also like putting together maybe hyped names that wouldn't go together, like maybe. And I mean, what's your take when it comes, to curators setting up people and?
I mean,
Wait, which question should we go for first?
I mean, I think people, yeah, obviously it's like appealing to like the element of surprise to just put two people together to know what it's gonna sound like. But I personally don't accept any that I don't feel like the combined sum of the parts is gonna be greater. And I don't know, I try and just accept ones that I feel like, yeah, we're gonna make something that will be better than us just playing separate sets. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's back-to-backs that make a lot of musical sense. I think Chechi and I play really well together because we're like birds of a feather in a lot of ways musically. But they're kind of the minority of most of the back-to-backs that you see being booked these days. Like a lot of it is essentially for novelty value, or for maybe novelty value is a bit of a harsh way of putting it, but there's an understandable pressure for festivals and club promoters as well to differentiate themselves by booking artists, especially artists at a certain ticket selling level that aren't playing solo at all of the other festivals. So it makes sense that like these back-to-back pairings are a way of creating something unique. But sometimes it works. Sometimes I feel like that uniqueness maybe is at the expense of.
But does it like put some additional pressure on you when you guys are playing? Like, because I guess that when you play on your own, you have like a clear idea where you're gonna go. But when you're put in this case, is it uncomfortable if you're honest?
I think it's kind of like the most spontaneous vibe, and that can be really fun because I think there's only so much that you can prepare for a back-to-back outside of what you already have prepared. And I think it kind of is like a moment of pure instantaneous response. And you can talk about, we often do talk about what we want to do, and then it's honestly very up in the air whether it actually goes that way. And that's, to me, one of the funnest parts. There's only so much you can talk about it. In fact, I have had sets where we've talked a lot about what we wanted to do, and then in the moment, I've just been like, I don't think that we should do that, actually. It's just a moment of, pure spontaneity, and it turns out just like,
Yeah, and I think sometimes also if you do end up going off-piste from like your original plan in a set, then having someone to do that with like takes a lot of the pressure off.
Totally, yeah. And the thing is, I know that I can throw you a curveball and you'll be just fine.
Well, that's something I wanted to ask you.
Sometimes
do this on purpose, sometimes too.
Spice it up. I don't intentionally try to throw a wrench in your way, but sometimes it happens and I'm like, oops. But I know that of all the people, you'll be able to handle it well.
That is the fun thing.
And that is the fun thing, because you can be like, sometimes we'll be like, oh, do you want to go like really fast now? And they'll be like, or like sometimes it'll just happen, or sometimes it's a slow moment, or sometimes it's a, yeah. I think that's part of, I think, yeah, the spontaneity is one of the funnest parts of it.
I mean, I think also having a sense of like when it's appropriate to, when it would be fun to throw in a curveball and see how the other person responds, or when it's appropriate to get out of the curveball yourself and bring it back home a little bit.
I mean, that's the other thing. I do feel like if we
and I think we both have quite a good sense of
yeah, totally.
Like,
and if it is like enough of a curveball where it's like, oh, this will be really hard for you, or
it's like this track is 45 seconds long and it changes tempo.
We'll be like, I'll take the next one or whatever. But I also know that you could do it, so it would be fine either way.
Well, I guess the next question is maybe a bit related to this, but I wanted to ask you about your like honest opinion of the current DJ culture, because I guess there's been a vibe shift after COVID and a lot of things have been discussed already, but I wanted to ask you if you maybe miss more adventurous takes and more adventurous DJing nowadays, because I do realized in a way or sterile and more kind of everything's under control in comparison, at least when I used to go maybe since 2015 to 2020, there used to be more weird stuff played in the clubs compared to now, at least here in Slovenia. I don't know if it's comparable to Berlin or maybe London, but I don't know, when's the last time that you were kind of really impressed by someone's daring approach? Or
I mean, we just came from free rotation last
weekend. We just came from
free
rotation, where we saw some
sets.
very daring sets. In fact, some sets that made me be like, I'm so happy this is happening. I mean, I think the reality is we're in a recession right now, and so it's like, I think across all fronts, there's just a vibe of conservatism everywhere. But I will say, like, I think immediately after the pandemic, wouldn't you agree? Like, it was like, yeah, I did feel like people needed to, you know, receive what they know, and there was kind of that vibe. And I did find it a bit frustrating, but every now and again, I just find pockets where it's like, you can still be weird. It's maybe harder to know what they're gonna be right before, but I do keep being kind of pleasantly surprised. Even in Berlin, I mean, I guess that's why we both do our own parties. It's kind of like a place where we can do exactly what we want. And that has also just been kind of joyful to create a vibe where, you know, maybe I'm unsure if I can do this everywhere, but like knowing I can do it at my party or at a few special things, that just gives me a lot of life. And I do feel like the more it's been permeating more, I've been seeing it more, and I think, yeah, that makes it worth it. I don't know, you can also.
I mean, I think it, like, so much of, like, the answer to this question is comes from, like, what your own personal experience and trajectory through the scene at a certain time has been, and I'm really hesitant to give, like, a definitive answer because, you know, for example, last year I had a long run of like really creatively and musically rewarding gigs at a time when so many people around me were saying like, oh, it's really hard, like everyone just like wants hard techno and like I don't feel very much freedom to play whatever. And I was having the opposite experience, like largely in like small and medium-sized clubs, but also at some bigger shows as well. This year it's been more of a mixed bag. I don't know. I mean, I do think that it's true that like immediately coming out of the pandemic, or like maybe not immediately, but like in the year or two after the pandemic, things were in a like markedly weirder place, like across the board. And like, I mean, attendance was down, which didn't help, but also like the atmosphere, a lot of the events was just, yeah, either more stiff or more druggy or more kind of like not quite there, which had a knock-on effect on like how comfortable you felt like being musically adventurous. But I kind of feel like we're maybe kind of easing out of that now.
Yeah, and that just gives me even more reason to want to try to play like that, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you don't try.
I mean, obviously, like, none of this is touching on like the broader movement of like mainstream dance music culture towards like, I don't know, TikTok techno or whatever. Like that's a different story. But like in the kind of smaller independent corners of the music scene, I don't know. I mean, I think like it's hard out there in practical terms for like clubs, for promoters, for artists, for people in a recession. But I think there's still opportunities to do your own thing.
I
And
think the
be
next
weird.
question is quite related to this one, because I wanted to ask you if you're like an up-and-coming young DJ who wants to basically carve their own way on the scene, and they know that there's not much appeal for their sound or maybe their aesthetic. What would be maybe your tips for them? I know it's quite maybe a shallow question, but still it's.
You want to go first?
No, because I guess you guys have had that experience in the past decade. I guess that it wasn't that easy when you started to be weird or like more adventurous.
I mean, I remember like, you know, people often complain about Berlin crowds now being conservative, but I mean, fuck, like try playing there in 2011. Like if it wasn't like, just like minus era minimal techno, then people just weren't interested. Like anything without a 4/4 kick, like just forget about it. So I don't know. I feel like I think it's super important to be true to your own musical personality and to play stuff that you stand behind and that you actually like. But at the same time, you have to decide for yourself, like how important is it for you to play to an audience that's actually appreciating what you're doing. And if that is important to you, which arguably as a DJ, like, I'm not going to say it should be, but like for most people it is, then I think it's worth trying to find where the overlap is in the Venn diagram of like your tastes and kind of contemporary tastes, and find ways of inhabiting that overlap zone while being able to push things more towards your direction, like as far as you can go without completely alienating yourself from the people you're playing to. And depending on the setting, you might be able to get away with more, or you might be able to get away with less, but I don't know. I personally found that approach more rewarding than just playing exactly what I wanted to hear at the expense of losing everyone in the room. And for me, that middle ground was techno, basically, because I like techno. I don't really want to play a whole set of it, but like it's a glue, it's a substrate, it's a basis for everything else that I wanted to play, and it's quite functional. So like it's easy to mix with other things, and you know, for someone else that might be house, for someone else it might be, I don't know, some other genre. But I guess that's my take.
I don't know. I guess since I mean, you kind of had your musical growing up in Berlin, and I had my musical growing up more in the States and in parts in the UK. For me, I don't know. My MO has always just been like, the one thing you have to give is your own personally unique voice. And I think I've always felt like trends come and go, but what you like is always going to be, that always has to be the center of it. And like, I don't know, I guess I've just been around long enough to see, like, there was definitely a time when all the things I liked, nobody liked. And I still played it. And I honestly did feel like a lot of people weren't interested. But I feel like I believed in it enough, and I found a way to deploy it well enough now that I feel like I can convince almost anyone to get on board with it. And I think just really sticking with it and just, really also being clever with how you deploy it can really, make it really come through. And I don't know, I've always just thought like, the one thing I have to give is my personality. And whenever I play a set where I feel like I haven't been able to show that, I feel like I've kind of cheated myself. And there's always like glue in between these things, all these different things that I like. But I feel like my advice is just find out what you like and like really go deep on that. And honestly, don't really give a shit about pleasing everyone. Because I feel like when I'm convinced and when I want to show people like I really love this and I want you to be on board, that's when I've actually been able to convince people. And I feel like that has been true for me. Yeah.
I also think that like your personality as a DJ doesn't just come from what you're playing, but also
How you do it.
the way that you mix, like the way that you choose the next track, the way that you string things together, and that persists no matter what genre you're playing.
Yeah, true. And like sometimes it'll be like, okay, maybe I can't play like, this shoegaze song right now, but I've figured out ways to play it. Like, I mean, you've seen, like, I will make it happen. I don't ever make it at the expense of people, but it's like, you know, I mean, that's why, I mean, I used to play records, but now I love CDJs because it's like, you can get really creative with how you can mix these tracks and really combine them and make it still work, quote unquote, on a dance floor, work on a dance floor for anyone. So I don't know. I think that's kind of the power of that.
Okay. I think you gave a really, really thorough answer. So, many useful suggestions. And okay, I guess last but not least, are you guys playing any dubstep tonight? Because I don't think I've ever heard dubstep at Butik Festival, so...
We can definitely play some
You know
dubstep.
what? Now that we know that it hasn't happened.
I don't know if you checked the stage, but it has this really beautiful, huge rigs.
Oh, great.
And
okay.
they sound great. And Kia proved it yesterday. She did a great show. So just a small suggestion.
Now that the seed has been planted, you may or may not.
That was a request more than a question.
I feel like
request.
this request will probably be honored.
Okay, thanks so much, guys.
Thank
for taking
you.
the time, and see you under the stage in a few minutes.
See you there.